Okay, so next question. Are any of you guys yield farming? If so, what recommendations can you give us? Great
Yeah,
question. Great question.
yeah. Let me step in here first, because I've literally been down the rabbit hole of yield farming to its fullest extent. When it initially started out, thank you, Coach. When it initially started out, all the whales were like, it's a big players game, XYZ or whatever. But when things started to ramp up and there was a lot of high upside, even smaller players were able to really capitalize on that. And I still kind of maintain the same sentiment that if you come out with something new and exciting and difficult, it will probably make money. You look at the evolution from YFI to Yam to sushi to kimchi, and forget what that YOLO one was. That was also somewhere in there as well. But there was a lot of failures too. Zombie. I mean, you can consider shrimp a failure to an extent, even though they tried to bring it back a few times. And still pretty sure I have like V1 spaghetti that I need to trade in somewhere. And I know some of these terms are a little foreign, but it got very saturated. Everyone was literally farming sushi clones left and right, every single food that you could think of that may get people excited. Some Trump coins mixed in. It got really saturated, and then one day we woke up and literally 33% to 50% of them were rugging people, right? So the general rule of thumb is that if it's a fork of something, do a check differ for the context of the code. Most of the good ones really only have the changing of the main variables in the in the later portion of the contract. It's not difficult to do. The other thing is that you want to make sure that these contracts are time locked, that they use the transfer ownership function. You can find that at the bottom of the Etherscan in additional details. It'll just say transfer ownership in the text doc. And
Now,
I've also
quick
written up
question, Nadi.
a lot of this. Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
what software do you use to do the check differ? Is there a site in particular you use?
Yeah, you can just Google check differ, and there's one particularly that I use. Let's see, check diff. It'll be diffchecker.com. It's an online
Okay.
diff tool to compare two different types of text. And usually, what I do is as soon as I see a yield farm come out, and by the way, I'm gonna pivot this to saying that yield farming is somewhat dead, but
Mhm.
as soon as a yield farm comes out, I look at what it does specifically. If it has a GitHub with additional information, even better. I want to know why it's different than something else. What is its gamifiable features to it that's going to position me in the best case scenario? You have to understand that when looking at yield farming and looking at anything in investment, game theory is super critical. You really need to think outside the box. You need to think, what is my edge? Why is this different? What are the fundamentals inside of this? All of these questions are relevant when you're analyzing how you're even going to play this. What pair do I think that my opponents are going to be on that's going to have the lowest liquidity early on? Is this something that I'm willing to hold past the first 30 minutes to an hour? Is this something that I'm just going to flip out as soon as I see some sort of interest come on? The major rule that everyone knows is don't get high on your base supply. Never, ever, ever buy the base asset unless you think that there's a reason that you should be holding it. So one example of that may have been an expanding supply that would take maybe 7 days for it to happen. Maybe it's better off, since there's not going to be a lot of sell pressure coming down on you, that you buy the base supply and then stake it. Maybe we're in the pre-sale, similar thing. You can just split your tokens in half for ETH and then sell that over there once the initial selling pressure happens. All of these are very relevant in terms of your analysis of what's happening with a yield farming play. Talked about Binance earlier, very difficult to do, a lot of different steps. I had to send money to Binance, get BUSD to send it to some weird custom node on my MetaMask. Who and how many people are actually doing that? Not many. They'll start doing it when they see people making money. End of story, right? But in terms of keeping yourself safe, because that's what the most important thing is you almost never want to stake liquidity on the underlying pair. You always want to stake it in some sort of safe contract. You want to make sure that you're looking in the check differ for two specific functions. You want to know what they're specifically doing with the liquidity provider function in terms of being able to transfer liquidity provider tokens from contracts. And you specifically want to know what they're doing with the mint function. If they have a mint function in the contract, that means that they can drain the liquidity pool, and that threatens you if you're a base supplier, meaning you're buying the actual token that they're farming out and then supplying it as liquidity provider on Uniswap. That's what threatens you. If you're a liquidity provider in just terms of, like, let's say USDT, ETH, or something like really stable or whatever, then transferring liquidity tokens is relevant to you. Now, you're looking for people, if you want to have low risk, you come in a little bit later, right? You don't have to be the first one through the door. Come in within 15 minutes and see that they've transferred the ownership of the contract that is the master chef contract or whatever, And you want to make sure that that has been transferred to a time lock contract and has been verified by Etherscan. What that does is it's a basic level contract that makes sure that all functions called by the owner's wallet will take 48 hours to execute on chain. Also realize that we're not here for the long game. Get in, get out. Most of these are highly inflatable. Most of them are dumping their stuff onto the things. The reason why I see yield farming is kind of pointless right now is because you had this big saturation. So wait for things to calm down, wait for eyes to go away somewhere else, and then analyze where those key plays are of what things that make them different. One of the big things right now that's still kind of low key that, you know, Coach K and I were talking about a little bit earlier was that people are starting to look at yield farming in a way to somehow reward people with NFTs. They realize that the NFT hype is coming, whether it's real or not, it's coming. You're going to make people, I'm not going to say you're going to make money on it, but people think they're going to make money on it. You know, I'm very big into anything NFT right now at the moment, just because I think value is subjective. I used to own a Ken Griffey Jr., you know, non-circulating rookie card from 1994 with the Seattle Mariners. It was my favorite thing. I had it next to my bed at my grandparents' house when I went to sleep. There's some people who don't even watch baseball. Kind of think about it like that, right? Now you're talking about building a technology on top of it and an expanding ecosystem. That's very exciting. So people get excited about that stuff, and people think yield farming is such a huge thing, which it is. It provides less volatility in an ecosystem that needs incentive. Think about it like that from a very simple standpoint. People, when they provide liquidity, they're short on volatility. What can they do if volatility happens? It's not a good ecosystem if everyone's getting wrecked. So they need ways to be able to incentivize people to provide that on-chain volatility. Yield as a concept, not just yield farming, meaning like ripping a website and putting up some, you know, clone contract, but yield as a concept is very important in terms of being able to lower that volatility for what's happening. That's the DeFi ecosystem at a high level, 1,000 feet up, and that's where yield farm takes its place into the ecosystem.
Wow, great stuff, Matt. Yeah, people love it.
Yeah.
So you go ahead, Coach K.
No, it's just a great overview of like what people should be looking for, because it really doesn't matter, you know, what the farm is. Honestly, like it doesn't matter what you're farming. Half the time, in my opinion, you can make money from complete garbage. So it really depends on getting in and looking to see if they can rug you or not. Like that's why the distexes and the unicrypts are pretty interesting, because they show you. But we've also seen that things like Trust Swap, anyone who's been paying attention to that, what happened recently
with that,
how
yeah.
What happened with that?
Team locked.
It was Hatch. Yeah, Jeff Kardisic went hard deep on shilling Hatch for the Trust Swap, and Trust Swap was supposed to do something specific of like rug proof stuff, and then Hatch essentially from an admin perspective like liquidated everything, right?
I think they minted a bunch of like all the tokens they could, and it just like completely screwed everyone out of their money, and now everyone's mad at them. But like, yeah, it's not really their fault, you know what I mean? But you know, things like that are still going to happen. So even if you are a good project or look like a good project, it can be bad. So yeah, I find like farming is just like a quick in and quick out. You know, maybe you can hold on some things a little bit longer. YFI, of course, you can hold for long term, but like, you know, there's projects where you should probably just, you know, farm it, get your money and get out and put it back into either Bitcoin, or if you do like stable coins, maybe DAI or RSR. So there's those opportunities that you should be looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying that farming's dead. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, farming is a really unique way of distribution, but the farming that we've seen up until this point is like unlimited, and that's not feasible. But you know, people are really big on governance too. I don't think everyone and their mother needs a governance token. It's extremely saturated right now in terms of like everyone's just trying to capitalize on a really fancy word that means that we're going to incentivize you to be part of our community to make money, which again, I go back to the same core tenets that one of crypto's biggest use cases is to make money. It's literally a community of tech enthusiasts mixed with degens who are looking to provide massive upside in an economy that doesn't meet our needs, right? For millennials and the generation below us, we look at a future that could be devoid of social security. We don't have the same safety nets that we have 60 plus. So we are more risk averse because we look at this paradigm that things are more bleak. So crypto is really appealing to us because it's a mixture of technology and high upside volatility. And, you know, for things like yield farming and all of those things, they mix into that. But, you know, back to what I was saying, yield farming looks at things from a governance perspective. What governance do you need, and what does it benefit me? YFI is the first mover advantage for what a governance system for an $8 million company, right? But not everyone needs governance. Everyone's trying to distribute that governance fairly to people who are buying into the system. So that's the proposition that yield farming brings, is that you're buying into our community, you're buying into our system financially, and you're being rewarded with something that may have some value if we're successful. So.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I've not dabbled too much in yield farming, but the projects I have farmed, SushiSwap, Yams briefly for a few days. Now there's been lots of interest recently in the last week in Pickle Finance. Not sure if you guys have been looking into that one, but that one I think had one of the most liquidity. Last time I checked,
it's one of the highest volume. Yeah, it's one of the highest volume coins on Uniswap right now. Over the 4-hour pool cycle. If you go to, I actually linked you a link earlier, Ian, to Dex Tools. A lot of these Uniswap coins, you're going to find their charting integration over on Dex Tools. I have 5,000 Dex Tools, so I can use their premium service. I think that it's lacking in certain regards, but since the TradingView integration, I've been a lot happier with the product. It definitely beats out people like Astro, that's a little bit laggy, or ChartX, which is also extremely laggy, but they're having their own ICO right now or something like that. But the standard right now for Uniswap is Dex Tools for trading stuff. And you can see on there, Pickle's just absolutely crushing it. But again, it's just another one in the fad that's going on right now. Like same with Core, right? Core is basically you stake liquidity and then give it up forever in exchange of Core. And now it's just like everything's locked. So it's just going to keep going up and up and up. So at what point that's essentially just a Ponzi scheme, right? That's what a lot of people are saying. I'm not putting that on them. I don't like people coming in my chat and looking to hunt me down for saying things that I don't mean. But yeah, so there's going to be a new one every day. Some of them will stick, some of them won't. Even Uni has its own yield thing going on with governance right now that you're going to be able to stake with liquidity mining, and same with 1inch and all that stuff. So yeah, again, the proposition is please buy into my system so I can give you money. Right. That's right. The proposition. And that'll keep happening until people stop making money. It is a somewhat external threat to Uniswap as a whole, because you want to be able to incentivize those lower liquidity pairs that are going to have high volatility. But the lower liquidity pairs will be fine. People who are bigger players who understand the mathematics behind the game, because Uniswap liquidity is not some easy concept to quantify into the things that I talked about today. Those people are still going to be there because they see the net ROI. They're able to either leverage tools or leverage their experience to be able to do so, or even their capital, right? Because if you have capital, you can have a lot more leverage in the market. But in terms of the lower liquidity pairs, there needs to be a way to incentivize them if you're going to have on-chain data.
All right. Well said. Bill, any last words?
Well, I remember in school, the director of the program said, don't play someone else's game. So I'm into DeFi, trading the tokens, charting them. But when it comes to actually doing yield farming, particularly if you listen to the expertise of the two gentlemen that came before me, I think you leave that to the guys with the tech knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Don't try to play the game with them and think you're going to win. This Pickle chart is interesting.
Okay.
If you want to talk about a chart, but
yeah, go ahead.
So this is a little bit